This first excerpt is the beginning of the chapter Filtering Reality in Thomas Sowell's Intellectuals in Society.
I think it's Sowell, isn't it?
Sowell?
I think so.
Keep trying to say Sowell, and then I see how it's spelled, and I can't do it.
Yeah, the problem is we have a Sewell right in our.
So it is. I think like Alma. Like I'm going to go Sowell. Like I'm going to pronounce it like that, and I can't.
Right.
Thomas Sowell.
Thomas Sowell.
Not Sowell right. Okay. Filtering Reality. The preservation of the vision of the anointed has led many among the intelligentsia to vigorous and even desperate expedients, including the filtering out of facts, the redefinition of words, and for some intellectuals, challenging the very idea of truth itself. Many among the intelligentsia create their own reality, whether deliberately or not, by filtering out information contrary to their conception of how the world is or ought to be. Some have gone further. J.A. Schumpeter said that the first thing a man will do for his ideals is lie. It is not necessary to lie, however, in order to deceive, when filtering will accomplish the same purpose. This can take the form of reporting selective and atypical samples, suppressing some facts altogether, or filtering out the inconvenient meanings or connotations of words. With regard to selective samples, Sowell writes, filtering the sample of information available to the public can take many forms. For example, Bennett Cerf, or Cerf, I'm not sure which, the founder of Random House Publishers, at one time during the Second World War, suggested that books critical of the Soviet Union be withdrawn from circulation. When the American economy was recovering from a recession in 1983 and unemployment was down in 45 out of the 50 states, ABC News simply chose to feature a report on one of the 5 states where that was not so, or as they put it, quote, where unemployment is most severe. As if these states were just more severe examples of a more general condition, when in fact, they were very atypical of existing trends in unemployment. So that's the first little excerpt, just his framing of the issue and 2 examples of how in the past media has led, well, the first one is a call for actual censorship of books. But the idea that ABC looked at 50 states, found a trend that should make all of us feel good in 45 of 50 of them, and decided to report on one of the others while actively eliding the fact that this was the exception is, well, as you said earlier, back when journalism was happening, this was back when journalism was supposedly happening. And still, this filtering of facts, while making it seem that you are getting the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, has never been the case, honestly.
So there is a very deep question here. Mm-hmm. The license to adjust the presentation of reality in the truth-seeking realms, journalism, the courts, science, the university system, all of the places where truth is sought, there is always an argument to be made that certain truths are counterproductive and that we would be better off either adjusting them so that we present the thing that is most useful to believe, or editing those which are inconvenient and presenting those that go on narrative. There's always this argument. It needs to be settled exactly once. The fact is, you don't have a right to do that because truth-seeking itself is incredibly valuable in moving forward. And what that means, and this is, was obvious to the founders, for example, what that means is that you must suffer the costs that truth inevitably brings in order to get its benefits, right? Just as the enemy is always those who don't want you to hear your enemy, right? The enemy is always those who are arguing in favor of their right to edit the truth for utility. Now, the problem with that all is very clear, I think. The problem with that, and, I would say, for example, literally false, metaphorically true, right? Here you have clear, evolved stories that are not literally true. They are, in fact, in many places in conflict with what we can discover to be literally true, but obviously have utility. And I'm not attacking those things. Those things are valuable, have been valuable. What I'm saying is they don't belong in the laboratory, right? The place where you're seeking truth is not a place for metaphorical truth, right? It is a place for literal truth. The problem, however, is the universe is a very complex place. And we understand a lot in some places and very little in some others. And you have to have a mechanism for dealing with the stuff that you don't get yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the stuff in the Bio 101 textbook is bullshit. But I call it bullshit because it's not done correctly. It does not acknowledge, we don't exactly know what takes place here, but here is something that could fit that space, and we will find out over time how much of this is right and how much of this is nonsense, right?
But putting a lot of black boxes into a Bio 101 textbook will not suit the professor who doesn't want any questions, will not suit the eager undergraduate, maybe pre-health or just is, thinks that they need the answers and they need to know exactly what they are, and uncertainty is uncomfortable. So those textbooks that have actual black boxes that say, we're not sure about what goes here, it might be this, it might be this, but we know that we start at A and we end at F, and we're not sure what B through E look like, would be a much better textbook in terms of teaching people actually how to think scientifically, but it does not fit with people's expectation of certainty.
Well, and the expectation of certainty varies with topic. In other words, the thing that always troubled me about the bio textbook was that it was written in the same style as the chem textbook. And the fact is, intro chem, we do have a really good idea how all that stuff works. We are encyclopedic. Now, there's a place, you go far enough in chemistry, you get to a place where we're confused again. But it isn't in the intro textbook. In the bio textbook, it ought to be all over that thing. And so they shouldn't be written as similarly encyclopedic.
I agree with you. I will just asterisk here that chemistry also uses metaphor, right? Like all the sciences use metaphor, and many scientists, if you say that to them, are like, I most certainly do not.
Right.
What are you talking about? But the example for me, and you've heard this before, is like orbitals. Like it's not those neat little concentric shells like they make out it to be. And increasingly I think that there is discussion of cloud rather than shells and such. But it is simplified, even if the actual understanding that we have is better at the level of basic chemistry than basic biology in some places. The intro textbooks are still written as if it is more simple and less nuanced, and we are more certain than we actually are.
Yeah, it's just that the difference between the chemistry and the biology is orders of magnitude in terms of what fraction we understand.
And because of the difference in complexity.
Right, because of the difference in complexity, absolutely. And there's another issue, which we hinted at the beginning of the podcast. How are we to depict a neuron that has, several thousand dendritic connections to other neurons? You could have just a sea of complexity, and then the student doesn't understand the neuron.
Yep.
Or you could simplify it, and then they get the wrong idea of the neuron, and it gets overly ingrained. And one of the, I've become troubled by this over time. Never figured out exactly what the right thing to do is, other than just to call attention to it. The capacity of something, especially something visually compelling, to mislead the mind is so great that when we do diagram a neuron and it has 8 dendrites and 1 axon, and the number of axons is right, but the number of dendrites is way the hell off, we create that broken model in the mind. And the point is, it's like a snowplow when you're skiing, right? The snowplow might be how
low adaptive peak.
Yeah, it's a low adaptive peak, and it's hard to get out of it, right? It's once you've learned that a snowplow is how you can control your speed, it's hard to pull your skis together and learn to, use a turn to control your speed. So anyway, we
because it requires that you are facing downhill with no brakes on at some moment in every turn.
You are crossing the fall line, and so we've got to figure out how you own up to this ahead of time. You tell the student, look, there's a thing that you have to do temporarily, and it's not right. But you're going to get this first, and then we're going to fix it later. And if we got good at saying that, we're going to, either this is something we've learned.
Like the image comes up with an asterisk. Like, okay, you can now visualize that neuron, but have that have that asterisk in your head as well. That's part of the visual.
Right. This is 50% wrong or 10% wrong or something.
I wouldn't
something,
quantify it. But
yeah, I wouldn't quantify it either, but something to indicate that there is something, that learning this thing will make you feel clever, but there's a next stage which is going to make it feel dumb or something, right?